Good afternoon, friends. Karma here with Lewis Acre Farm and your thought for Thursday. Oh, I am so excited to share this message with you today. I am going to be bringing you a message from Genesis 22. It is the story of Abraham and Isaac and the time where God asked Abraham to take his son to the region of Moriah and sacrifice him. Many of you are familiar with this story and how God came to Abraham and spoke to him. And in verse 2 of chapter 22, God says, and I am reading to you from the New International Version, God said, "Take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you." And then the next day, Abraham goes about the preparations without telling anybody what he's been told. He goes about all the preparations necessary to prepare for this monumental task. I mean, can you just imagine? Here you have this child, and you love him with your whole heart. You love him with everything within you. You've waited for this child your entire life. And now God is asking you to do the impossible thing. He's asking you to sacrifice this child. And so Abraham is obedient, and he loads up his donkey with everything that he's going to need to make this sacrifice. And in verse 3 it says, "Early the next morning Abraham got up and loaded his donkey. He took with him 2 of his servants and his son Isaac. When he had cut enough wood for the burnt offering, he set out for the place God had told him about. On the 3rd day, Abraham looked up and saw the place in the distance. He said to his servants, 'Stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you.'" This is a very, very important point here. He has been told by God to go and sacrifice his child. Yet listen to what he says to his servants. In this statement, he says, he and his son, will go and worship. They're going to go and worship God, who has just told Abraham to kill his son. And then he goes on to say, "We will come back to you." What? Wow. What a statement of faith. And then Abraham takes all of the preparation materials that he has gathered and loaded his donkey with and places it on his son. That means all of the burnt offering wood and everything. He puts all the wood on his son, Isaac. And then he carries the fire and the knife. The 2 of them go off together. A little bit down the road, Isaac starts getting curious, like any boy would. And so he says to Isaac, "Father," and Abraham says, "Yes, my son. The fire and the wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Abraham answered, "God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son." And the 2 of them went on together. Now, as a child, children, it says in the Bible that we should have childlike faith. Children typically take their parents at their word. So I could imagine that Isaac may have still kind of wondered, but probably took his dad at his word. Probably thought, oh, okay, well, dad knows best. But he probably still kind of wondered a little bit. In verse 9, it says, when they reached the place that God had told him about, Abraham built an altar there and arranged the wood on it. He bound his son Isaac and laid him on the altar on top of the wood. Then, in verse 10, then he reached out his hand and took the knife to slay his son. Wow, can you imagine what was going through Isaac's mind? Can you imagine the things that Isaac must have said at that point? But the angel of the Lord called out to him from heaven, Abraham, Abraham. Here I am, he replied. Verse 12, do not lay a hand on the boy, he said. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me, your son, your only son. Verse 13, Abraham looked up, and there in a thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Verse 14, so Abraham called that place, the Lord will provide, and to this day it is said, on the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Verse 15, the angel of the Lord called to Abraham from heaven a second time, and said, I swear by myself, declares the Lord, that because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you and make your descendants as numerous as the stars in the sky and as the sand on the seashore. Your descendants will take possession of the cities of their enemies. Verse 18, and through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. And in verse 19, then Abraham returned to his servants, and they set off together for Beersheba, and Abraham stayed in Beersheba. What an incredible testament to faith and to obedience. I mean, and then if you look at where Abraham looked up and saw the ram in the thicket, you know that ram was probably there all along, but because he was so focused on being obedient and doing what the Lord had called him to do, he did not see the ram in the thicket. He was busy about doing what the Lord had told him to do. You know, sometimes we get busy doing what we are doing in our life, and things happen. Sometimes things happen that appear to be negative, and we don't know how God's going to provide. But if we stay in faith, if we trust in and fully rely on God for our provision, we'll find that ram in the thicket. We will see his provision come through for us, especially when we are busy about doing what God has called us to do every step of the way, the whole way through. Not just when he's called us to do something, but throughout every day of our life. If you weren't there or haven't heard, my husband and I recently had opportunity to see this work in our lives. We were in a situation where my husband lost his job, and we thought that it was a negative. But we saw where God was protecting us from potential harm. We saw where my husband would not have stepped out and applied for another job without having lost the job that he had. And we would not have been able to receive the blessing of obedience in other areas of our lives had he not lost the job that he had. There's so much to this story. it's hard to unpackage in a short little video. But because we had been obedient in small things, and because we had received the protection from God in this other matter, and we had been obedient and remained in faith and did not allow fear to control us when he lost his job, God was able to take that situation and to bless us with a ram in a thicket. In 72 hours, Logan was able to find another job that is better than anything that he's ever had, better than anything that I ever had when I was able to work. And it just shows how when you remain in faith, when you are walking in obedience to God, no matter what is thrown your way, God will provide. He is Jehovah Jireh, our provider, our provision. And our provision is there when we walk in obedience, when we walk in faith, and when we allow him to be our protection, to be our all in all. I purchased a book about the names of God, and I'm going to be starting a new series on our Thoughts for Thursday, exploring what the names of God are and what they mean to us. So I do hope that you'll tune in and learn with me the names of God and how they apply to us. But this is just a little bit of a sneak peek into Jehovah Jireh, our provider, and how obedience and faith can bring about provision and protection. If you would like to hear our full story on how God protected us first through something that could have been absolutely devastating and was our provision, go and watch Talk About It Tuesday, episode 2, and you can hear our full story. There is so much in there. It's just beautiful. It's amazing, and God truly does deserve to receive all the glory in this. But anyway, that's where you can hear the full story on that. But I would just encourage you, share those stories of how God has provided for you, how he's protected you, and how walking in obedience and in faith has given you your provision. Those are your testimonies of faith, and that's going to build others up. So drop a comment on the video today and build me up. Build up others in the comments. I need to hear those other stories to continue to build my faith, and I know others will be built up too. So give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. Share it out, and if you've not subscribed and you've enjoyed this, be sure and hit the subscribe button, and then you'll be able to hear more stories and of faith and encouragement each week. And just want to encourage you guys, stay in faith and be encouraged. Be encouraged each and every day, because God loves you and so do I. This is Karma with Lewis Acre Farm with your Thought for Thursday, and I will see you again next week. Bye.